What's up, everybody? Thralls Metal here once again. I'm Necrotic Nick, and I am back with part 2 of my top 40 best albums of 2024. We are ever inching closer to the top 10 here. Once again, I will reiterate that this is an awesome year for metal in general. Once again, I can't really think of like a flat-out bad year that we've had here recently, but this year in particular, much like last year, seemed just chock full of absolutely killer releases. And we are going to go through yet another giant batch. We have 25 through 11 here. And then up next is the top 10. So let's just get this started. And with number 25, we have a nice, sad, and somber offering from Pallbearer, Mind Burns Alive. Admittedly, out of most of these albums, this might be one of the albums that I listen to the least, and it isn't because it isn't awesome, because it's on this list, it's because it is unbearably sad. Now this kind of marked a bit of a change in the band's sound overall. It's definitely not like the last one, maybe a little bit closer to Heartless, where this is more vocally driven than I think the band has ever been before, but their sound still has an absolutely soul-crushing weight to it, the big, droning, doomy riffs, but a lot more clean passages, and an unbelievably warm bass tone that just kind of floats in the background of this music. This is harrowing. This is one of the most emotional listens I think I had this year. In fact, when we did the review for this one, I was actually reading the lyrics, and I probably shouldn't have, because instantly I just felt depressed. And this isn't like your gothic melancholia. This is like real world battling depression, barely being able to get out of bed kind of stuff. And that kind of gave it like an emotional connectivity for me that, well, it kept me wanting to listen to it, but it also kept me from wanting to listen to it too much. Anyway, this album is amazing. Again, a little bit different, but I still think it captures what this band does really well. If you're a big fan of bands like Monolord and such, but also, I mean, maybe like some of the softer, more intimate moments of like Isis and Neurosis too. Check this album out, and then just go ahead and check out the rest of their stuff if you haven't heard them before, because this band is just flat out amazing. At number 24, and I'm sure I'm probably going to get a little bit of backlash. Who knows? Maybe not, but I anticipate a little bit of it. But honestly, I really just grew to love this album. And that is Knocked Loose. You won't go before you're supposed to. Conversely, I think a lot of people go before they're supposed to, but that's just me. But yeah, I really grew to love this album's just blunt force heaviness, the breakdowns, the just infectious grooves and D-beats. Even Brian Garris's arf arf screaming kind of grew on me. I'm still not like the biggest fan of his higher register screams, but the rage and the angst that comes out with that delivery, I feel, is very genuine. This album is just flat out heavier than hell. I like the energy to it. The grooves hit hard. The production was definitely something to get used to too, just because, man, there's a lot of bass drops on here. Like, I swear this album was trying to kill my speakers. But these songs hit hard. Suffocate with Poppy, even though I'm not like the biggest Poppy fan, that song is absolutely awesome, and props to them for squeezing in a reggaeton breakdown in there. It actually works really well. The absolutely visceral nature of Don't Reach For Me and the biting lyrics in there, and that flat out nasty riff that opens up Slaughterhouse 2, which actually features a guest spot from Chris Motionless, who I'm also not a big fan of, like Motionless in White, but somehow I think his guest spot on here is pretty damn good. There's strange bits of atmosphere that kind of oddly fit, like on Take Me Home with the little like bluegrass or blues interlude on there. This album is just flat out visceral, and I just ended up really digging it. I know that, you know, a lot of people seem to be kind of on the fence with this band. Either they absolutely love them, or they absolutely hate them, or there's, you know, just some middle liars like, they're okay. I'm just not a big fan of the vocals. But I kind of like the fact that this band is kind of getting like a bit of a boost in fame. And it's not just for being like accessible and sing-songy or anything like that. They are writing visceral, heavy music that isn't trying to like latch on to clean choruses and, you know, try to like write a pop single or anything like that with metal riffs. They're just writing nasty metallic hardcore. So yeah, I don't know. I might get some shit for this one. I don't care. I dig this album. But yeah, if you're a big fan of metallic hardcore in general, I think this one was kind of like one of the ones that stood out this year for damn sure. Check it out. Give it a whirl. Give it a chance. Who knows? You might really dig it. Number 23. I don't have a physical copy for it because I figured it would get here in the mail by the time I got down to doing this video. And once again, I was off. Anyway, number 23 on my list is Veilburner, the duality of decapitation and wisdom. When it comes down to like more avant-garde, dissonant, atmospheric stuff, I'm really hit or miss. But this band, I think, does the sound perfectly, and they inject things that I kind of need to keep me latched on as a listener, like more progressive movements, actual solid riff work where it's not just a wall of dissonance and atmosphere, but all of that is still intact. Like, you have these absolutely insane vocals all throughout this that range from blackened shrieks to death metal roars to operatic wailing every now and then, and of course creepy chants to back up creepy music, because yeah, like, this band definitely wants to sound dark and foreboding, but also twisted and indescribable. But unlike a lot of the like overly dissonant, more avant-garde dissonant bands, like, it's kind of like an interesting subcategory that, you know, crosses into black metal and death metal. I find this band more listenable just because I think the songwriting is just way more interesting and engaging, and the dynamics that kind of separate all the atmosphere gives it more of a flat-out musical appeal rather than just like an atmospheric appeal. While I might favor the last one a little bit more, the songs of this album I think are really well constructed, and they had this very interesting theme that tied with 7 for whatever reason. Each track was 7 minutes long. There are 7 tracks. This is their 7th album. Generally, when I see something like that in terms of, like, you know, something more conceptual, I kind of wonder if the concept is going to outweigh the music, and I don't think that happened at all here. In fact, even with all the tracks being timed out to 7 minutes, all of them work well. Like, they don't feel like this one stretched on too long just to make, you know, that 7-minute mark, or this one cut off a little bit when they were on like a really cool part just to get into the next track because they had to hit that 7-minute mark. Everything on this album pretty much worked. In terms of like what you're a big fan of, I don't know. Like, this band kind of crosses over into a lot of territory. Like, there's stuff in here that reminds me of Sleepy Time Gorilla Museum. There's stuff in here that reminds me of like Mitochondrion. Occasionally there's like moments that sound like Decapitated. I just strongly urge you to check out this band in general. I've only listened to this one and their last 2, but honestly I'm becoming a bigger fan of this band with every listen, and I believe they're already working on something new, so I'm already pretty damn stoked for that. Point is, check this album out. It's absolutely incredible. It's weirder than hell, but again, very intriguing. At number 22, we have Thou, Umbilical. I was really excited for this one. Their album Summit is one of my favorites in terms of like just newer sludge albums, even though that album came out a little while ago. Even though they don't have a lot of full lengths, this band is prolific as hell with their collaborations and splits and such. So in the rare instance of them putting out a full length, I was really excited, and this album is absolutely crushing. Well, I'll say that this one maybe is like less atmospheric in terms of like having longer drawn out songs with huge builds. This album makes up for it in just outright aggression. There's a lot more focus on aggression on here, but that coupled with their just droning, sludgy, menacing riffs and the absolutely harrowing, just howling vocals on here, it just creates this just dark, unapproachable sound that's, you know, kind of akin to like I Hate God, but also has elements of like early Nirvana in there too. And then of course Melvins, and, you know, just a blend of like just really heavy off the wall things. And while I would say this album's texture is like heavy grain sandpaper, there's a surprising amount of like hooky, catchy melodies and solid grooves on here. I really wish they listed the songs on here, and even on the slipcase, it was like, nope, no songs listed. So I'd have to actually open up the CD, and I don't wanna. But yeah, across the board, this album is solid as hell, vicious, gnarly, everything you would expect from a Louisiana sludge metal band. If you are, again, a big fan of like I Hate God, and I would just say like sludge metal, but also like post metal too, check this album out, and then if you like it, again, go ahead and check out the rest of their stuff. And good luck with that, because there's a lot of stuff in there that I'm not even familiar with, because again, they collaborate with everyone. But yeah, number 22, check it out. At number 21, we have Necrowretch, Swords of Dajjal. I think I'm saying that right. I don't know. I know that in a year that Melikesh did not come out with an album, oddly, a year that I finally got to see Melikesh live, Necrowretch came out with a absolutely disgusting black and death metal album that sounded so much like Melikesh that I kind of wondered if Melikesh just changed their name. I've been a fan of this French black and death metal act for a while, but honestly, I think this might be their best album. It's blasty, it's intense, the riff work is intricate, melodic, and also has a lot of like cool Middle Eastern flavors to it, which definitely draws the huge comparison to Melekesh. I would even say Nile to a degree too. But for me, it's the songwriting itself. These songs are huge, they're lavish. A lot of them stand out for different reasons, whether it's like a more atmospheric, more plotting build, or just being flat out explosive out of the gate, or having some almost like progressive moments in terms of the riff work and song construction. This album is amazing. I came back to this one quite frequently, and this one's been out since, maybe like March or April? I can't remember. It was earlier in the year, and I was just absolutely hooked on the energy of this album. Like, there's a lot of like stampeding into battle sort of anthems, and then just like huge epic swells of, well, not like soaring melodies, but more like epic evil stuff. I don't know. I just dig what this band does, and I think that they have done it probably the best that they have done it so far. What I was going to say in my head sounded a lot better than the execution right there, but yeah, this is a fantastic album. Again, if you're a big fan of like Necrophobic and of course Melekesh, I think that's probably the biggest comparison I can make here, and even a little bit of Nile too. Check this album out. This is, again, I think the best thing that this band has released so far. At number 20, we have Mother of Graves, the Periapt of Absence. This year has been a really solid year for like Peaceville style Death Doom, in my opinion. In terms of like retroactive styles, I think there's only one other retroactive style this year that really kind of just came out swinging. But anyway, back to this album and this band. I've been a fan of this band since their first EP, and I can confidently say that this is probably their best work yet. This band does old school Peaceville style Death Doom, very melancholic and gothic and dreary, but also loaded with just heavy, nasty hooks. Think early My Dying Bride, early Paradise Lost, early Catatonia, early Anathema, might as well say all four of them. This band is just dreary and mopey, but also, again, crushingly heavy, and they do both styles so well and know how to weave them together beautifully. The song A Scarlet Threnody in particular. That song, I love its long, drawn-out opening build with those melancholic synths and clean guitars into these just huge, crushing, droning riffs and these menacing, roared vocals. Apparition and the title track in particular, also big standouts for me. There's an air of familiarity to this band's style that I absolutely love, and I think this style of Death Doom kind of coming back, I don't know, I really like that retroactive movement, because a lot of those bands ended up leaving that sound and not letting it kind of flourish a little bit more, and this band is kind of bringing back this old school droning, again, very melodic but very heavy style. They have that emotionally oppressive sound where every song feels like it's forlorn and longing for something. I don't know exactly what they're longing for, probably a human touch or maybe a chalice of fresh blood. It's hard to tell, because when they switch to heavy, you kind of believe that they want that chalice of fresh blood. Anyway, this is an awesome album. These guys have been, friends of the channel for a while too, so it's awesome to see this band grow. It's their first one on Profile and Lore Records too. So yeah, if you love old school Peaceville Death Doom especially, I think you'll absolutely dig this one. Absolutely crushing release, guys. Good job. At number 19, and this I alluded to with the last one in terms of retroactive movements in metal, one of the biggest ones was goth rock. At some point this year, metal rediscovered its love of Sisters of Mercy. Either that or they got bit in the neck by some rabid goth and started worshiping goth rock again. And one band that I think did it absolutely amazingly was Unto Others with Never Neverland. My God, is this album catchy. Every single song on here has infectious riffs, Gabriel's kind of almost monotone delivery, but that kind of like baritone crooning. It's definitely something to get used to, but when it clicks, and it works so well with these just dreary, melancholic goth rock songs that balance out good classic heavy metal riffs, but also throw in like lots of stuff you would hear in Sisters of Mercy, The Cure, Bauhaus, stuff like that. And the combination of the two work really well. While I don't think this is quite as heavy as Strength, their last album, which I absolutely love, I do kind of like the fact that this album kind of brings out the hooks a little bit more. Like there's a brighter hue to this, I guess you could say. I mean, despite like the darker subject matter, like songs like Fame, Sunshine, Suicide Today, they are just infectiously hooky. And there's a little bit of like, dry humor to this too. Like you definitely hear Gabriel pepper in some like sneering commentary every now and then, and it works really well. And this has got some good heavy bangers on here, like Mama Likes the Door Closed. Absolutely catchy song. It's kind of like if Metallica, kind of got together with a goth rock band and wrote a song. And this is like early Metallica, not like current Metallica. I flat out dig this album. Again, I don't know if I like it as much as Strength, but I know that I really like it, and these songs are just catchier than hell. I ended up jamming the hell out of this, and then I ended up going back and listening to Sisters of Mercy's Floodlands too, just for some reference points. And yeah, no, they capture that sound beautifully, even though I believe they don't want to be identified as a goth metal band. I don't know. I would say embrace it, because you guys did it so damn well. Anyway, if you're a big goth rock fan and you've slept on this band for whatever reason, strongly recommend checking this out. This is just an absolutely awesome album. Number 18, Morbid Saint, Swallowed by Hell. I know, I dogged on this album cover. I'm probably going to dog on it again, because there's no way in hell that this gentleman's name isn't Randy. And despite there being bigger things to worry about in this post-apocalyptic universe that Randy lives in, he is still really, really pissy about the divorce. Anyway, this is my comeback album of the year, I would say. This band went into a 30-plus year slumber, and I honestly did not expect them to come back. Their first album, Spectral of Death, is an amazing album. I think, one of the finest later thrash metal albums, bordering on death thrash at that point. And then they had an unreleased follow-up to it, which I do believe officially got a release now. But after that, they were just quiet. And then all of a sudden, I saw a track surface on here, the song Swallowed by Hell, the title track, and I was like, dude, that sounds absolutely vicious. And when I got this album, I was absolutely blown away as to how aggressive and how fast this was. This band picked up right where they left off. The thing with those long periods of dormancy is, when the bands do come back, you kind of wonder if they still got it. And I knew they had it pretty much right from the opening track, Rise from the Ashes. The pace of this album is ridiculously fast, it's explosive, and my god, the riff work on here. Dude, the picking on here is so damn fast, I'm surprised their wrists didn't fucking fall off. There isn't a single song on here where there isn't some part that is just ridiculously fast tremolo picking or machine gun chugs. This doesn't sound like an old band. This sounds like a new, hungry band. The vocals are vicious and shouty and mean as shit, and every song in here sounds like it wants to grab you by the throat and choke slam you, or do whatever the hell Randy's doing with that pair of buck knives that he got at Cabela's. If Cabela's still exists in this post-apocalyptic universe. I don't know very much about it. Bloody Floors, Fear Incarnate. Fear Incarnate is probably one of my big standouts in here, with that just mechanical, almost Fear Factory-ish drum intro into just the ridiculous syncopated just triplet chug after triplet chug. That song is just meaner than hell, and I love it, and I love this entire album, honestly. Every track in here whooped ass. There wasn't a moment in here where I felt like they kind of dropped off in energy. Not only would I say that this is my comeback album of the year, I would also say that this is my favorite thrash album of the year. This is exactly what I want on my thrash metal. I want just unruly, explosive songs and just riffs that make me want to bang my head. I 100% got that here. Check this out if you guys have slept on it, then go ahead and check out their other two albums, because they're all so awesome. But yeah, holy shit, guys, way to go. At number 17, we have Borknagar with Fall. Now, admittedly, I had kind of fallen off with this band. Actually, it was probably around the time that Vintersorg left. I really didn't check out anything post-Vintersorg. And then this one kind of popped up in a week where, I don't think there were a tremendous amount of releases, and we're like, well, you know what? I haven't been over Borknagar in a while. Let's check this out. I'd heard a couple of singles. They sounded really good, and oh my god, this album is fantastic. And then I also found out that the two previous albums are also really good too. This band's brand of progressive, epic black metal is absolutely amazing. All the songs have just a huge scope to them. They're anthemic. They're also brutal at times and just vicious as hell. Pretty much everything that I expected from this band when I was a really huge fan of them, which I would say once again, I am back to being a big fan. I just love this band's sense of scope in terms of their songwriting. Every song feels like it's designed for sweeping shots of snow-covered mountains and forests, and the dynamics that they use in terms of switching from just very heavy visceral sections to amazing clean vocals. ICS Vortex, I've always thought he's kind of sounded a little bit like John Anderson of Yes, albeit in a more, I don't know, epic fashion. They kind of had that same timbre to their voice, and I just love the vocal harmonies on here. They're rich, they're anthemic. Nordic Anthem in particular, which is all driven by these amazing clean vocals and like almost rhythmic tribal chants. The same on Afar, Moon, Stars Ablaze. All their melodic hooks have this giant soaring quality, but they also know how to bring you back with just solid riff work. This doesn't come across as like pretentious or anything like that. The songs are just grand and epic, and man, I absolutely loved every track on here. I love it when music kind of transports you to their setting, and there was nothing on here that didn't transport me to, like, again, those sweeping shots of just cold, icy nature in the mountains and such. Like, this just has that feel. If you're a longtime Borknagar fan, then you probably already know this is awesome. You probably also knew that the other two that came out before this were awesome before I did. Shame on me for sleeping on this band. That was my mistake. I'm going to correct that mistake. I'm just going to get the ones that I'm missing finally. And yeah, excellent work. Killer album. If you slept on this for whatever reason, like maybe the same reason I did, you also made a mistake. Check it out. And number 16, we have Spectral Voice, Sparagmos. This might be one of the darkest, most just atmosphere-drenched listens I've had as far as like Death Doom this year. For me, their first album, Eroded Corridors of Unbeing, is a Death Doom staple. Like, I think if you listen to Death Doom, you have to listen to that album because it's that fucking good. And that was a high benchmark for the band in terms of like coming out of the gate with an amazing debut album. Now, that's not to say I was worried that this album was gonna suck or anything like that, but that was a high benchmark to kind of match up to, and I would say that they matched up to it pretty damn well here. I don't know if it surpasses that debut, but it is damn close. And to a degree, it is a little bit different. This one, I think, is even more atmospheric. Every cavernous second of this monster sounds like the jaws of hell being pried open. This thing is just dark as hell throughout every single track, and they do a good job in terms of like opening up sections for like cleaner, more haunting passages. Definitely still a bit of disentombment worship with this band, but hell, I don't blame them. I actually had the pleasure of finally seeing this band live, and seeing doesn't feel like that's the right word since there were no lights in the venue except for the lights on their amps, but they sounded absolutely incredible. It was dark, it was menacing. I think I saw silhouettes of them behind the fog machine, but again, no lights on stage, and no lights in the merch booth, which I thought was just a little bit too much. Especially when people were still shopping for their merch there. I was like, yeah, I'd like that shirt with the thing that I can't see. You got a flashlight? This album, I think, is best listened to all the way through. It is just this like kind of agonized just descent into hell where you're crawling on your hands and knees throughout the entire time. This is an absolutely amazing release. I've been jamming it pretty much ever since we got it, and I gotta be in a very particular mood for it because it is particularly haunting and soul-crushing, but it is amazing nonetheless. If you're a big fan of Disentombment, like, you probably already love this band, but yeah, check this album out if you haven't. It's fucking killer. At number 15, we have Ancients, Beyond the Reach of the Sun. This was one that I really wasn't expecting since it had been such a long time since their last album, I think over a decade. And when I saw that this was announced, I instantly went back and listened to their first two, which I was a big fan. I was like, man, I wonder how they're going to match that. And honestly, they may have made their best album so far. This is progressive metal, progressive sludge. There's elements of death metal and black metal all kind of woven together. Oddly, I would say like this is kind of a combination of bands like Enslaved and Opeth, but also when the clean vocals come in and some of these more bluesy licks occasionally come in, it kind of oddly reminds me of Jerry Cantrell. There's something about his clean vocals in particular that just remind me of him, but in terms of music, I mean, this is just proggy, it's warm, it's heavy, lots of good galloping rhythms that show up, but also lots of atmospheric sections and clean melodies. There's also a lot of material in here that's very akin to like Baroness and Mastodon as well. Every song in here just has a lot of like lush beauty. There's great use of synths that come in, and they don't overdo any one thing on here. Like, all of this is really well balanced out. The songs stand apart from one another. And even though they're longer, they pepper in enough different dynamics in those songs to keep them fresh. Like, you know, you can get like a good heavy metal gallop going into like blast beats and growls for a second, and then open up into like these big proggy choruses and synth passages. It just keeps the album fresh, which is good because it is a relatively long album, and most of these songs are pretty long. But man, Cloak of the Vast and Black, Celestial Tyrant, Is It Your God? Pretty much every track in here I found something that I really loved, and honestly I would say it's even kind of an improvement over their last 2 albums. So once again, it's kind of cool to see a band come back after a long hiatus and put out something that is absolutely quality, and to me at least arguably some of their best work. If you're a big fan of, I mean honestly, any of the bands that I mentioned, and yeah, even a little bit of Jerry Cantrell, check this album out. And then of course, as always, go check out the rest of their stuff because it's also awesome, but I think this might be the best one yet. At number 14, we have Necrot, Lifeless Birth. One of my most anticipated albums this year, just because I love this band's brand of just old school riffy death metal. It is boiled down to its absolute essentials, but it's also seasoned rather well too, with killer leads, fun hooks. I mean, every riff on here, they just find a way to just make these songs catchy, but they don't stray away from that very old school, like, death, obituary, bolt thrower sort of formula, and it just flat out works. I mean, I could say that there's probably nothing on here that I haven't heard done before by bands that have probably influenced this band, but I could also say that if this comes on, I'm not turning it off until the album is over. This just does what old school death metal should do. Make it about the riff, make it like hooky but also still sinister. I love the vocal delivery on here. It's sort of a mid-range raspy sound, and the fact that Luca has such an awesome accent, there's just this added flair to his vocals, especially when you get down to like the chorus of drill the skull. It honestly reminds me a lot of Bela Lugosi doing the pulled the string thing. It's awesome. But yeah, from start to finish, there isn't a song in here that I didn't love. Cut the Cord is such an amazing opener. Dead Memories, The Curse, Superior. Every song in here is just chock full of just old school death metal goodness. And if that is what you want out of your death metal, this album 100% has it. If you're a big fan, again, Death, Obituary, a little bit of Autopsy here and there, Bolt Thrower, Benediction, just a bunch of classic shit. Check this album out. Absolutely awesome stuff. At number 13, we got another death metal one for you with Undeath, More Insane. Man, this album has become one of my favorites to jam by this band. I was admittedly a little bit hesitant when I heard the more drastic change in production, being a little bit more crisp and clear with Mark Lewis's sound rather than more of like a old school retro sound, which was definitely found on their first 2 albums. And here Alex doing more vocally in terms of exploring his range, but everything on this album flat out works. All these songs are groovy, catchy. I love this band's riff work and drum work in terms of the fun syncopation and off-time rhythms they like to use. It just makes the songs like a little bit more fun. Like they're not as like straightforward and always in the pocket. There's always some like fun accents and cool fills. But here I think this band really explores their sound a little bit more, even explores some more melodeath territory like Brandish the Blade. One of my favorite tracks on this album. It is just infectiously catchy, almost has like a Black Dahlia Murder sort of vibe to it. How the chorus keeps getting like more intense until you get down to the very end of it. I love that steady build and energy. And again, while there is melody to it, I wouldn't call it like, flat out melodeath. Like it's still got some absolutely punishing grooves. And groove is the thing that this band does so damn well. Like bones clattering or chattering? Clattering or chattering? God, I can't really make that one out. It's one of the two. In the Cave, that's where they're doing that. That song is just big, heavy triplet chugs and this slower, more menacing groove. It's probably the closest thing on here to having like a slightly more doomy tinge, but I just kind of like it when this band's like up-tempo and just in your face. Disputatious Malignancy. It's one of the catchiest songs I think they've ever written. Again, kind of that revved up vocal thing on the chorus. There's just something about that kind of makes it more fun. And honestly, like that's the thing that draws me back to this. This album is flat out fun to listen to. This is just headbangable song after headbangable song. Like I'm just smiling my ass off in the car when I'm listening to this. Like it's legit that much fun to listen to. If you're a big fan of, again, like Cannibal Corpse, I mean, there's definitely like some like Jungle Rot Obituary vibes too. Suffocation, like there's some big Suffocation grooves in here. I don't know, and honestly I'd say if you just like death metal flat out and you kind of like it to be a little bit fun and occasionally silly, check out this album, check out this band in general. It's fucking sweet. Good stuff. At number 12, we have Sybaris with Maze Envy. Man, 20 Buck Spin had another awesome year, which is kind of like par for the course. Like honestly, every year, that label just churns out killer release after killer release. And this was one that I was really excited for because I had their first album. I really dug it. And then I listened to this, and oh my god, it was even better. This California-based death metal act does old school death metal, and initially that's what I kind of expected with like a slightly doomy tinge to it, but man, did this album do a lot more. The crazy off-time rhythms, the menacing, dark, sinister riffs, the amazing roared vocals. I really think that this band just kind of stepped up to the plate and expanded their sound really well. I mean, of course, you still have like tropes of a lot of classic bands in here, but there's a lot of stuff that kind of mixes it up and makes it their own. And as this album flows, like the songs and the atmosphere get a little bit more different. Towards the end of the album, you start getting into like more doomy territory, like the last track on here, Geryon, The Plummet. It's as ominous as it sounds. It has, again, like echoes of like My Dying Bride. There's synths mixed in there and these just absolutely dreary guitar harmonies. But you also have songs like Labyrinth Charm, which is just dark and heavy and punishing as hell, just like ridiculous chugging on there. While this album is just riff driven as hell, there's so much atmosphere in here, and the production on here is just flat out amazing. It has that discernible grit that, you know, at least I know I look for in my death metal. Like, it can't sound too clean, but this is separated really well. Everything has space to breathe, and these songs do give like a lot of stuff space to breathe in terms of like vocals, guitars, and even some of the atmospheric swells as well. This is just an absolutely amazing listen from start to finish. The only thing I might skip on here is maybe the interlude, just because I'm not a big interlude fan, but that isn't to say it isn't well done. It's particularly haunting, and it does set up the next song well. This is just a flat out awesome release. If you're a big fan of like early Paradise Lost, Morbid Angel, like there's some incantation tropes in here too. This is just a flat out amazing album from start to finish. Check it out. And at number 11, to close out this one, and just outside of the top 10, but that doesn't mean I don't love the shit out of this album, is Judas Priest, Invincible Shield. Man, this album is just pure heavy metal glory. This is just riffs and harmonies. Rob Halford is still an amazing vocalist. Like, it is hard to believe that at 72, 71, 72, somewhere in there, he still has this amazing range, and of course his presence is just, I don't know, like, well, he's the metal god, duh. Every song in here just has like great choruses. Every song is empowering in some way. Like the opening track, Panic Attack, I absolutely love that nod to Tom Sawyer in there. That was just clever and fun. But songs like that, the title track, Trial by Fire, they have that just anthemic, empowering quality where every song feels like it's just out to conquer everything that fucked you over that day. I don't know. It's straight into battle shit, and I love that. The only thing I didn't like were people calling this a comeback album because, I don't know, I feel like they're kind of shitting on Firepower, which was also awesome. I don't know, like, I think this one might be a bit better. I don't know, it just does everything that I want Judas Priest to do at this point, and honestly, more. Like, I really wasn't expecting, you know, like another, you know, just flat out banger from this band. Because, I mean, these guys are like close to retirement age, and no one would fault them for retiring. They really don't have anything they really need to prove. Hell, even the new guy, Richie Faulkner, had a fucking heart attack on stage, and then he is right back at it. God, if that's not like metal as fuck, right? Anyway, this was close to being my number one album of the year, and then, you know, well, the rest of the year happened. There's just a lot of killer stuff, but this is a fantastic album, and I would say, like, pretty much from this on, all those albums that I didn't give a 5-star rating, well, this next batch of 10, including this one too, are 5-star ratings. There you go. Here's your 5-star albums that I didn't give out. But yeah, Judas Priest amazed the shit out of me once again in what is considered the twilight years of the band. Like, I don't know if there'll be another one. They said there might be another one. But if they chose to ride off in the sunset in their leather jackets riding Harleys with this one, I'm perfectly all right with it. This would be an amazing close to an amazing career for the band. So yeah, number 11 here, Judas Priest rules, this album rules. Good way to close off this part of the video. And with the next one, we'll be on to the top 10. So yeah, if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. And if you are new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We also have memberships. They are only 99 cents, and the perk that we do is a members-only live stream, which we will probably do one in January, just because December's nuts with holiday shit, and I don't like it. We might do like a regular live stream somewhere in there just to kind of break the holiday tension. But we also do have like our dumb emojis, which I have some ideas for some other dumb emojis, because that's the kind of thing we think about here. But yeah, this is the new way to support the channel if you would like. We also still have our store, thrallsmetal.com, which is linked down below. That has our t-shirts and hats. So if you're interested in any of our merch, go down there. And if you're interested in joining the channel and becoming a member, click the join button down below. And of course, thank you guys so much for all the likes, comments, literally everything you do to keep this channel going. We absolutely love doing this, and it's just amazing that we've made it through another year of just crazy releases and tons of reviews, and it's just been amazing to have you all here with us for it. So tons of content coming. Of course, January's, generally not big on new releases, so we'll have some other content up. But yeah, thank you guys for everything you guys do, and we'll catch you later.